Nubook 2, A Journey to Real Freedom, Part 1. My entrance with this adventure. Down and down I went, from the real universes into the darkness of the psych realms. I had made the decision, and at the same time I questioned myself. As I went through the deep dark border, then into the etheric realm, I was suddenly with an encumbered body once more. My real freedom from the 7th life level was now left behind, as I had to continue downward into the God realms of time and space. I could hear the roar of laughter from the Callum God as I passed through the huge mental realm. I could feel the intimidation of those asleep to the all-is, as I was the one to bring forth what almost no one wanted on the earth: real truth and real freedom. As I flew ever downward to gain the experiences I needed as a collective impression before entering the limited physical body, I continued to experience the restrictions of the bodies I was taking on once more. As I went through the causal realm, I could sense the memories once again of all those lifetimes of torture and cruelty from the invented systems of control, and finally to the life I had on Earth before this one as the Golden Warrior. As I continued on, I was feeling the drudgery and involvement of so many minute emotions of the past that were crawling all over me as I went onward through the astral realm, and then finally into the vast darkness of the solid physical realm, with the darkened sky in the background and millions of stars sharing their light. I could see the earth very clearly as I passed the moon off to my right. As I felt myself being guided to my position of return, I was wondering how I would make it through another tested life on the infamous floating rock, the Earth. Closer and closer to the Earth I sailed, until I went through a cloud layer that was spread so far and wide and high above the vast land masses. I flew with invisible wings from horizon to horizon, like a bird looking for its nest. With my great view, I could see the dotted lights of civilization everywhere, as I soared down into the place that I would be starting my new earthly experience again. It was a very rainy evening in the location of my destination, and at some point I penetrated the walls of some unfamiliar building, then into a room where a woman was lying on her back. I felt very resistant as to being here, and I felt the presence of others with me. Opening scene 1. I was born to a farm girl from the northernmost state in the US, Minnesota. My new mother was lying on the hospital bed, making funny noises, and looking up at the doctor, and trying to push my new little body out. I could sense that she had done a good job creating the body for me. I was actually viewing her from one side of the room, and at the same time moving back and forth from the little body inside of her, as I was practicing my escape. I did not want to get caught in that little vehicle just yet, and so I was preparing it to loosen up. Even before I arrived in the room, I knew that I was in the wrong place, yet I had to be here to get everything started with my new life. Watching what was taking place was not really of any interest to me, because I had been in this scene so many times before, and somehow I survived it. I already knew the earth was a strange place, but I was here for a reason, and somewhat willing to get on with it. One may wonder how I already know all of this, and so, to find out, more information is in Book 1 of the Adventures series, from then to the new nowness. Well, I was not entirely in the body yet. I still had the advantage of being outside of it, and at the same time experiencing it without any restrictions. After thousands of lifetimes, I had learned so many lessons about the physical bodies I had taken on. Suddenly, and wouldn't you know it, I saw my new body come screaming out of my new mother. As I watched, I knew I really didn't want to be here. I turned to my friend, who guided me to this place, and said forlornly, Rebazar, do I really have to get into that thing again? I know I agreed to this, but now I am not feeling too good about this place. I already miss Shiss and my home on the 7th life level of the All-Is. He laughed a bit, then nodded his head up and down so slightly. The impression I received from him was that I needed to learn a lot more, and this life would do it for me. I had already been shown why I was coming into this life, but now that I was here, I didn't want to go through with it. It's like being a child, and you're told about going to the doctor, but when you actually do, you want to run. My new mum was very young, too young at this age to have a kid, but she was tough and had a strength about her. I had had many mums before this one, and I knew what relationships were like. A lot of drama. There would be a lot more drama to go through as I grew up, and then to get through before I would be able to get on with what I was here for. It was March, which meant I was a Pisces, far from my real element, the great ocean of life, which the Pacific Ocean was a reflection of in the material realm. I knew that I had to do something to get this girl's attention so that I could live where I wanted to. But I was really too small to make a difference right now. I wanted to get to the big ocean on the west coast, where I had been in my previous life. From then to now, the return of the real, that I write about in Nubook 1. Well, here I was, only several minutes old, and I was already thinking about getting on with things. The real me knew what to do, but I had to wait for the little me to get bigger and become familiar with this new life and all the human silliness I would be dealing with. I already knew my new mother was a very independent girl of 19. She was a little young to handle me, but then again, I had to enter somewhere, and she was the best choice at the time. I think the whole idea of having me was against her will. My new dad was the one who wanted to have children. Most people don't know they can choose their parents for the most part before coming back into a new life on Earth. people on earth seem to think that they have made the choice to have children, but it takes an agreement from all those involved. After the new little vehicle exited her body, I was taken to the clean-up area, where two big people, who I had never seen before, eventually brought me back to my new mum. We both sat there, looking at each other. She would smile, and then I would try and smile, but it was hard, because the lights in the room were so bright, and the new body that I was in felt so weird and restrictive. She didn't seem to realize that I had just come from a very dark place, and now I was in a whole new world. This was not fun. If most people paid attention to each lifetime they are destined, for they would begin to see the real cycle of birth and death. However, what happens is they get caught up in the illusion of the formulation of what appears to be life in action, when in reality it is merely a process that we are all going through to become more aware, through the restriction of a physical body, which is the elementary stages of the real you. Each one of us eventually becomes motivated to explore beyond all that has been considered in a material sense, and move ourselves into a real life. After this and that went on for a while, I was getting sleepy. I wanted to dream about the big body of water that I would be living near, once I got something decent to wear, and some shoes that fit. I began to realize that these people really didn't understand my nature as to the kid I was, and that I was born to explore and live the adventure. Someone who wanted to get on with things. I had a lot to do this time around, so much more than my new mum would ever know. I didn't have time for all the funny little things that I knew my mum would put me through, but I was willing to, somewhat. I'm sure by now many are wondering how this little, innocent newborn knows and sees what I do. Simple. I was trained to be more aware, not an intellectual, but more real and centered. Anyhow, after all that went on, I finally did fall asleep and began to dream. I was suddenly standing beside my dream come true. The big blue Pacific Ocean. It is a wondrous body of water that reminded me of my real home on the 7th level. It isn't as good as my real home, but it was good enough for this place. I was now in the new body, and having to relate to the new little mind I had to deal with. There is one thing good about a new mind, and that is, it knows nothing. I was centered with real being, and forgot everything else while in the experience. I stood there, watching the waves roll onto the shore, and listening to the wonderful sound of the breaking surf as it rolled in and made its way to the land. The sun was shining overhead in a clear blue sky and reflecting the wonderful light from above into my awareness. It was all a dream come true, a dream within a dream that was all mine. All of a sudden, something happened. It was freezing. I was back with my new mum, and stuck in the body again. All I could consider was how to get back out again.